Welcome to the Global Me podcast, your gateway to a world without borders. I'm your co-host, JC Prieto-Williams, principal at Williams Advisors International.
Whether you're seeking a new home abroad, exploring golden visas, or investing in global real estate, we bring you the insights to make it happen. I'm Shannon McDonald, founder of McDonald Coaching, where I specialize in expat and relocation coaching.
With a special focus on the US, especially Texas, we also dive into top destinations like Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama, Portugal, Spain, the UK, and the UAE.
Remember, if you want us to help you explore a new destination, we'll make it happen. So get ready to unlock opportunities and design your ideal global lifestyle.
Let's dive right in.
All right, so welcome back to the Global Me podcast. Today, JC and I are going to be discussing how to find the right neighborhood in Texas. So this is something we both have personal experience with. And I know, and I'm sure you do as well, JC, that when someone is moving to anywhere, the first question they are asking themselves is, where am I going to live? And that's where so much of people's research and time goes into before a move. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree. Well, good morning, Shannon. Good morning, everybody. Definitely. I think that is the very first thing people start looking into of saying, well, where I'm going to do, where am I going to live, where are my kids going to study, where is going to be my doctor, where, how long is it going to take me to get to work? Would I have a gym close by? Where's the nearest grocery store? All these different things, right? So definitely that planning, it's critical.
Yeah. And the one thing I wanted to mention is today we're focusing on moving to Texas specifically, but these same principles apply to moving many places abroad. And also in this episode, we're assuming that this is for someone who knows which city they're going to be moving to. So this is someone who's being transferred for a job, a situation like that, rather than someone who's moving just to Texas in general and thinking, okay, which city should I live in? And I know you have clients who are in that position. My clients are more, we're being transferred for a job. So we're going to this city. It's just which suburb we want to live in. But I think that it would actually make a great episode another time, maybe next time, to talk about some of the major cities in Texas and what they're like, so people might be able to make a decision if they are lucky enough to be able to decide where to live.
Oh yeah, completely. In fact, we do have a service which is basically a destination report, and it compares the different recommended cities on terms of whatever the priority is for that person or that family, right? So there might be people that don't have any kids, right? And so, or people that have 4 kids, or somebody that's single, or somebody, so they have different needs. So based on that profile, we create this report that compares Dallas versus other cities, Houston or San Antonio, or even smaller second tier cities. So we do have that. And I think it's a great idea if we could go more in depth next week on the topic. But like you were saying, right now, I think it's good to kind of give them a sense of what they should expect when they come into that city that they already know where they're going to be living in.
Right, exactly. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is there's a big difference, like you mentioned, between people who don't have kids and people who do. If you don't have kids, you're a lot more free to decide to live wherever you like in a city. If you do have kids that are school aged, school is going to be a big determining factor. So, I always advise my clients, look at the proximity to school and to work. But if you have to pick one over the other, which you very well might, you should probably go with the school, because schools can be varied in Texas. So I would say the choice, first of all, that a lot of people are making, some people are moving with a company, and they might have a schooling allowance that would
Mm.
allow them to send their children to private school. So in that case, then you're just looking for a school that suits your curriculum needs. Maybe you want to stay in a British schooling program. Maybe you want a, French speaking program. There's a lot of options. And again, if you're going with private school, where you live is not necessarily as important because you don't have to, live close to the school. And I was researching this. My kids don't go to private school. They go to a public school in Katy. So I wasn't really sure, but the average cost for private school in Texas overall, so this is counting, big cities, small
Hmm.
places, everything, is about $11,000 a year.
Yep. Hmm.
But that varies. Again, in Houston alone, it's more like $27,000 a
Oh,
year.
wow.
Yep. And it goes up as the children's ages go up. So high school is going to be more expensive than elementary school. So it's definitely a consideration. If you have the budget, if you have a company sponsorship for that, that's something you might want to look into. However, there are excellent public schools also in Texas, and that's one of the advantages is that you can come here and find a great public school and not have to pay school fees. So now the caveat for that is a lot of the best school districts would be in areas, in counties that have high property taxes. So although you're not paying school fees, you're going to be likely paying higher property taxes. And I guess if you're renting, this isn't impacting you directly, but indirectly, you're going to be paying higher rent in a place with higher property taxes. So, for example, some of the counties I found that have the highest property taxes are Collin County, which is the Dallas Fort Worth area, Fort Bend County, which is Houston area, and Travis County in Austin. So those are some of, depending on the year, some of the top three. And these places pay over 2.3% in property taxes. So what that could look like, depending on your home value, it could look like 500 to over $1,000 a month in property taxes. So that's definitely something to consider. But if you're going to public school, you are going to be zoned to the school that's in your neighborhood, your district area. So that's when you're going to want to really get down to the research. There's a lot of online resources. So there's the Texas Education Agency. They have their ratings for school performance. There's also more unofficial websites like greatschools.com and niche.com. So you can look at school ratings, and those are based on academic achievement, diversity, a bunch of other factors. So again, then you can get specific and search on property websites based on specific schools. So it's a bit of a web, and it does take a lot of time. And this is a service that I've actually provided to clients before because it is, again, just so time consuming. But the information is there. And so it really just comes down to you don't want to just find a house and not see what school you're going to be zoned to. You want to make sure it has a good rating. And even more so than that, depending on the ages of your kids, even if they're young and not in high school, you want to look at the high school rating because that's arguably the most important one for then going on to college. So it
Yep.
becomes a big decision, really. And so if you have kids, I would say schooling becomes a huge, huge decision. And you want to make sure that you find a good place.
Yep. No, completely. I think I remember when we did our own thing, our son was going to start first grade, and one of the big components of my matrix, I had this huge matrix about cost and neighborhood, school, crime rates, all of these different things, right? Um, the biggest chunk of it was quality of schools. So we originally had identified a neighborhood here in Austin called Circle C because in the Austin Independent School District, we found one elementary school, actually two elementary schools that were really highly rated. And it wasn't until, and I think this is key. I think it wasn't until we came about 6 months before we actually moved that we toured different sites and different like neighborhoods and and the schools that we decided on a completely different school district.
Mhm.
We found another school district which was much smaller. The Austin Independent School District has something like 80,000 students, and we ended up in Lake Travis Independent School District, which has 13,000. And so the investment per kid in LTSISD is something like 40 grand. And so obviously the facilities are great. You know, the football fields. I mean, the high school is like a mini college. It has two football fields, three baseball. It has a performing arts. It's huge, right? But like you were saying, at the end, the property tax, most of the property tax is based on schools. So when you see the breakdown of that property tax, you'll see that about 80 or 85% corresponds to the school district, right? So that's why bonds and the elections around budget for school districts, it's huge, right? Because it impacts your budget directly or indirectly if you rent, as you were saying. So taxes become like a thing, right? So here in Austin, I would say also that within a county, taxes vary, right? So in the Austin or Lake here in Austin, you would have different tax rates because of the school districts, right? So there's, I don't know, maybe like six or seven different school districts in Austin. So depending on that school district, then your property taxes is affected. So we have our competing school district, which is Eanes
Mhm.
school district, which is rated number one in Texas.
Yeah.
Um, that one has a higher property tax just because they just spend more money
Yeah.
on their schools. And even though we're in Travis County, both of us, we pay a little bit less than they do, and we pay more than, let's say, Steiner Ranch ISD or something, right? So
Mhm.
it does vary by county. Um, but that is one big consideration. The other thing that you're going to find is that homes also pay homeowners association fees, or HOA, right? HOA fees vary greatly um, from where you live. They could go from $50 a month all the way up to $300 a month. And I think that's basically being in real estate and understanding how the entitlement process and all these building permits and the way projects are planned and developed is because you'll see a lot of planned communities, right? You would see big home builders planning 5,000 homes in a brand new community in a new suburb. So they create a new suburb, right? It's not like in some other countries that basically you have homes kind of just organically grow through the city, right? I mean, we do have that here as well, but there is more, and as the city has grown, these new planned communities are more common, right? Just like Katy, or just like in many
Mhm.
north of Dallas, and obviously here in the suburbs of Austin, and anything up and down I-35, you start to see these big communities. And so in order to offset the tax benefits the developer received, right, there's all these HOA to maintain the water retention or the electricity or whatever, because in some cases the city is responsible for fixing the street or the public infrastructure. In some other cases, you're not, because, like, for example, you could have what they call the planned unit development, where people that live in that development are responsible for garbage collection and fixing the road
Yeah.
and putting up a bump or whatever. The city is not responsible for that. So that's why HOAs vary substantially depending on where you live, and we could definitely get more into that in our edition of real estate and residential real estate when we actually get to that one.
Yeah, for sure. And I would add, I mean, the HOA is something that when you get here, you hear people complaining about it a lot because another goal is not just sort of those big things that you mentioned, but maintaining community standards of the lawn
Right.
looking nice and only
The
certain
color of what
trees.
how you paint your
Right. You're only
house.
allowed to
Yep.
plant certain trees.
Yep.
And it's intended to protect the property values also in the neighborhoods, which makes
Correct.
sense. But I mean, being here now for a year and a half, we got our first few HOA warning letters about a couple things on our property and, rolling our eyes a little bit. And we
Yep.
had a fence knocked down during the hurricane last summer. And we just my husband and our neighbor just rebuilt it themselves because it was just a small portion of the fence,
Yep.
but they've changed the fence codes since our fence was built. So we got a letter saying, "Oh, that's not up to code." So we
Oh
had to
God.
argue that
Yeah,
one. And I
leaving the
mean, it's
garbage can on the curb for
yeah,
overnight.
right,
Yeah,
right. There's a lot
past
of
10
things like
a.m.
that. Yeah, yep. So
Yep.
people do, it's kind of a love-hate relationship sometimes with
Yep.
the HOA. And I know that I've seen a lot of properties advertised in, Houston, central Houston, and one of the benefits is they're saying there's no HOA on this property. So
Yep.
sometimes people like to not have HOA, but then also like you mentioned, these planned communities, they have great amenities for the most part. They'll
Yep.
have playgrounds, pools, tennis courts,
Yep.
sometimes gyms, all of these things that are quite nice to have. So it's again something to be aware of because the prevalence of an HOA isn't something that's common everywhere in the world.
Mhm.
So it might be new to people who are coming here for the first time.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So how do you see the difference of living in these suburbs against cities or the city center?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a big one for me since I'd never lived in a suburb since
Mm.
leaving my childhood home.
Oh wow.
So I've been
Yeah.
living, in the center of some amazing cities like Central Paris, Cape Town, right in the middle of the action, Dubai in the marina, just really living a very urban
You just
life
want to
for
make
so
everybody
long.
jealous.
I
You just
know, I know, I
yeah.
know. But now, I mean, it was a huge
Yep.
adjustment to
Yep.
come and think, okay, well, we've got kids and they're kind of tired of living in an apartment, even though that might be what we prefer to do. And they
Yep.
want space and a backyard and neighborhood friends. And
Yep.
so for this stage of life, I think that the suburbs really suit us. And I also know many people in my neighborhood in Katy who grew up in Houston in
Yep.
more inner city neighborhoods and their parents still live there,
Hmm.
but then because of the schools and the general affordability they've moved out here. And so I think it really just depends what your priorities are. um the cities vary too. I mean, Houston is so big and so spread out. And so even if you're living in a central area in Houston, you're not necessarily able to walk to a lot of places. Whereas
Mm.
Austin is much more of a walkable city, I would say. I mean, it's still big and spread out, but there's main streets and areas where you can kind of walk around and there's a
Mm.
lot going on in a condensed space. Um, so I think that again, that's something that you can't really know until you come and check it out for yourself. So that's why I would highly, highly advise people to, if at all possible, come and see what you think. Because, like you
Yep.
said, with the schools, you had an idea in mind, and then that changed once you actually got here.
Yep.
And the benefits of these master plan neighborhoods in Texas are really great for families. Not to mention safety. I mean, the
Yep.
generally the closer you are to the kind of center of a city, the less safe it's going to be. And with families that living out in the suburbs, sometimes makes more sense.
Yeah, you know what? And now that you're talking about this, I'm kind of thinking about my everyday, right? And so as these planned communities grow and get established, services follow, right?
Mhm.
And so you start creating this community. For example, Pablo, my son, he's like engaged like in swimming, football, taekwondo, and he plays the trumpet. And so everything, like all these different places that we go, are close by to our house and to his school.
Hmm.
And so it's great that in 10 minutes you could go from the school to swim to football, and then if you want to stop by a do a target run as they call, you
Hmm.
could drop by, and then you also run into your friends, right? I mean, you see everybody's doing sort of the same routine in some way or another. So you always kind of are bonding constantly with, those people that are close to you, right? So you got your kids become this catalyst for networking, right? Because you're at school, then you're at swim, and then if you bring them to the supermarket or HEB, then you have that's the way you're starting to get connected.
Yeah.
Where in the city, I think it's more about where you work, right? For example, downtown Austin has completely transformed since we've been here in 5 years, right? There was like, I mean, they built like maybe 25 high,
Mm.
skyscrapers, and as more people are coming back to work, um, but many people decided to live in downtown. So I think there's about 20,000 people that live in downtown Austin, which is a lot for Austin. Austin itself, it's only 1 million people. So you do have a lot of people in proportion living there. And so I think a lot of the networking and the social life, it's more around millennials, Gen X's,
Mm.
boomers, trying to kind of live a more social lifestyle, and and a big trigger to that is work, right? And the other thing that I just want to mention is the throughout the different cities, you're starting to see this mixed use, work, play, live, kind of concentrations, right? And so there is more of that for those people that like to live in these city centers.
Yeah, for sure. And I
Yep,
think that if, again, it just comes down to your own priorities and
yep.
what you value. And I know, but I love, I mean, what you said about being able to do everything in your neighborhood. That's something that I have grown to really love. It's just, I mean, I'm not driving all over the city like I was in Dubai to take the kids to, this activity, this
Yep.
school run. I mean, my kids take the bus. It's amazing. Um, but I do know, and also just having all of their friends within a neighborhood is so nice. And I have friends who do live in our neighborhood but send their kids to a private school for whatever reason, because of company sponsorship or just preference. And they are driving all over the city because their friends are coming from all over the city. And so they're going
Yep.
to drop their kids off in the Woodlands for a play date. And so then again, you're not, when you're doing that, you're maybe not getting the same benefits that you do just going to the local school and having that kind of
Yep.
simple life.
So I would say that whichever parent is the one handling the home, they're going to be driving around, right? Short distances, but frequently, right? And in many cases, the spouse that gets to go to work to the city center, right? Because then that's sort of the offset, right? Like one stays in the suburb with the community, with the kids, and the other one has to potentially go to work, downtown. And
Right.
so for that person, they will be driving, right? I mean, Texas is huge. Texas is really about highways and about using the car. Definitely is not Central Paris, right? With public transportation and walking and doing the bike thing. You definitely have to get into, your car and drive. For example, I drive to downtown maybe 18 miles, right? That could be, maybe 25 minutes. I mean, in time, it's not significant, but then it is in terms of distance. So, and this is a very simple. I remember when we recently moved, we leased a car, and the guy at the dealership said, "How many miles do you want in your car? Do you want
Hmm.
10,
Hmm.
12, or 15 or something, right?" And I was like, "Well, if we're gonna be, in Bee Cave, Lakeway area, I'll do 10. It's fine, right?" And by the time my first year finished, I ended up doing like 16,000, right?
Oh,
And
%. Yeah.
it was crazy, right? Because I needed to go to a bunch of different places. So you do drive. If you're the one that has to go to meetings and downtown and all these different things, and because all these cities are interconnected, you could potentially go to another city very frequently. So you plan on, whoever is going to be on the on the work side of things, or if both of you are, you definitely have to think about having a reliable car, an efficient car, and for kids, definitely, the mom mobiles, as we call them, are
Mm,
essential, right? Because gear, friends, and you want to be comfortable, right? And
yeah,
everything's
yeah.
big here, right? So everybody drives
Hmm.
like these huge trucks and vans and things. So
Yeah.
you need to come, get up to speed on that one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was talking to someone the other day and they told me the average commute time in Houston is like almost 30 minutes. So people are
Yep,
doing that on a daily basis. And I think,
yep,
I mean, you can hope to time the traffic so you're not going at peak times. If you're lucky, you can work remotely a few days a week, but it is inevitable that people, like you said, are going to have to be
yep,
driving, and it's something you have to just come to terms with. I mean, you could
yep,
we've done a sort of cost benefit, like we have two cars, but my husband doesn't go to the office very
yep,
much, so sometimes we
yep,
think, should we just get rid of one and he could just Uber in when he needs
yep,
to. So there's different options, but
yep,
none of the cities that I know of in Texas are very well set up for, great public transit. So it is
yeah,
something that you're going to need to
yep,
factor in, yeah, cost wise and
yep.
paying for gas and car insurance and all those things.
Yeah, fortunately, also, homes are getting fitted for your own office, and there's also a lot of co-working sites now
Hmm.
around. So if you want to not be at home to work, but you don't necessarily have to go to an office every single day, 60 miles away, there's all those options to be able to, do the hybrid work from a site close to us, or to your home, and then, driving to the office a couple times a week. So, but yeah, definitely get good insurance, get a comfy car, and expect to be driving around, right? That
Yeah.
is definitely one of the things, right? Because it's definitely it. So I don't know. What would you say are the main takeaways, Shannon, for today's episode?
For today, so I think that we talked about the importance of finding a school, doing your
Yep.
research, and ideally living close enough to that school that you're not going to be doing a huge commute every day.
Hmm.
We talked about the HOA and just, some things to consider with that to be prepared. Um, just a little bit, again, a lot of this is personal preference, whether you want to live out in one of these master planned communities or whether you would rather live in a more central area. And then, yeah, just talking about the commute, the inevitable commute that
Yep.
everyone's going to
Yeah.
have.
And remember, the cost of living in really good school districts,
Mhm.
does have taxes attached, or HOA fees attached to that. Um, but overall, I think people feel comfortable in having those higher rates, because if you see the schools they're great. I mean, the middle school that we sent our kid to had a building budget of like $90 million,
Wow.
and so it's a great school. He loves it, and so I mean, at the end, I think it's if you could do it, it's only money. So it's great, because it's not only the facility, but there is a lot of activities, right? That the school kind of promotes, and so yeah, I think that's a good one. Driving is going to be an issue. Um, and I think next week we could get more into specific cities, right? And how to
Yeah.
choose specific cities, as well as the real estate component of buying or renting, and
Yeah.
understanding more on how to find a place to live.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I could have used that episode when we were moving here a year and a half
Yeah,
ago.
no
So
kidding. Yeah.
great. Okay, good.
Awesome.
Well, it was
Well,
good to chat as always, and we'll have another one next week.
Great. Well, have a great week, everybody, and see you next week.
See you. Bye.
Bye bye.
That's a wrap of another episode of the Global Me podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow global explorers.
Connect with us on social media and let us know where your global journey is taking you next. We might even invite you to the show to share your stories.
Until next time, keep dreaming, keep exploring, and keep creating your best global life.